When I round up all my like top 3 favorite plants or so, or just favorite species of plants, Skindapsis is definitely always up there. I just feel like Skindapsis always has the prettiest leaves. It's always got that blue-gray kind of color going on, and it's almost as versatile as heartleaf philodendron and pothos and all that sort of stuff. And they're just about as easy to take care of as well. It's super easy to tell when to water them. Their leaves don't retain a lot of dust on them, and then they can basically stay in the same pot for quite a long time. First things first, if you don't know how to tell when a Skindapsis is thirsty, you should know that way before you even start taking care of Skindapsis. So with their thick leaves, they usually curl in a bit when they're thirsty. And you don't want to let it get to the point where it's absolutely wilted, but the leaves definitely look a lot skinnier and a lot more curled. And it's like you do the taco test with these ones, just like you would do with like a string of hearts or something. So if you can fold it in really easily and there's like no resistance there, then you need to water the plant. And if it's not, then you can hold off. And this is a really easy way to like avoid overwatering, because I know a lot of us just kind of water and we remember and we don't know when we last watered, and it's a really easy trap to fall into, and then you, as a result, start overwatering your plants. There's already been several instances this week where I wanted to water one of my Skindapsis because I've thought, oh, it's been a really long time since I've watered this. But when I go to look at it, it seems perfectly fine. The leaves are totally fine, and that's just, I know I shouldn't water it because that is the quickest way to kill a plant. Basically, all the Skindapsis that I know of as well tolerate lower light conditions. Now, obviously, I keep mine all in like medium to bright indirect light just because that's what I have, and I like to keep my plants all in that. But I know they definitely do tolerate the lower light, which is really nice because then you can kind of put them wherever you want. Skindapsis is a trailing plant, and it's a trailing plant when you just don't have anything for it to climb on, but in the wild it does like to climb. And you can tell this really easily for any plant, even though this is specifically Skindapsis, because at each node there's a aerial root, and when there's aerial roots, that means that it wants to climb, or at least find somewhere or other. So if you want your Skindapsis to grow much more bigger leaves and just like a lot quicker, then I would suggest staking it to a moss pole or some sort of just something for it to grow on. I don't have any of mine on moss poles right now just because I don't have any of my plants on moss poles, but I do intend to do this pretty soon with some of my plants. And it's something that if you want like that more tall and you don't have a lot of space for it to like hang off of anything, a moss poled Skindapsis is definitely the way to go because it will look super pretty, and then it doesn't take up as much space in terms of like width. It will get really tall, but it doesn't take as much like wide space up. Like I said with the light though, Skindapsis really do thrive in brighter light. I know, just don't have it in like directly bright sun because the leaves on some of them do tend to burn quite easily. And this plant is one that doesn't, in my experience anyways, it doesn't quite take shocks to the environment as well as like a pothos or philodendron would. That being said, it does recover very well and pretty quickly in my opinion. The thing with Skindapsis too though, with every single different variation, they do react a lot differently, and it just does take a bit different care. Like for instance, this satin pothos Skindapsis, I don't know how to say the actual like genus of this name, but this is one that I kind of had in a bit of a shock like late last year or so, and it lost a lot of its growth that it had been like putting out and working hard for months, and just had developed a lot of brown spots on the leaves and was just like declining really quickly. So when I got into my new place, I put it in the brightest spot that I had and made sure that I didn't overwater it was like the key to this bit. And it bounced back in an instant. It looked so good, and I don't think I have any pictures from that time, but if I do, I'll put it on the screen. But it bounced back really, really well. But I know that this one has been one of the most temperamental Skindapsis that I have ever owned and I've ever taken care of. And from what I've seen with like friends and other people in the community, it's also a bit temperamental for them. So if you're wanting to get into Skindapsis, but it is your first time with the Skindapsis or just plants in general, don't go for this one. And I'll put the name on the screen right here since I can't pronounce it, so you know which one not to go for if you're a first time plant parent or first time Skindapsis owner. But like I said, that Skindapsis declined really quickly when I took it on a road trip with me, but I have another Skindapsis that I actually took on that same trip with me, and it didn't lose a single leaf. There was no brown spot whatsoever. And that one was a lot more hardy. So this one that I'm going to show you next, if you do want to get into this plant, this is the first one you should get. It's the Skindapsis Exotica. And this one I just have in its nursery pot, in a cover pot as well. So it's just gonna be making some noise as it like falls around here. But this one is just starting to vine off of this side right here, and I haven't rotated it in a while because I'm trying to get it to vine off of one side. Before it was just kind of all growing up, but now I have like this side's quite bare and then this side is the trailing side. But this one is a lot more rewarding too if you are like a new plant parent and you're new to taking care of plants in general. This one has much bigger leaves than the previous Skindapsis that I showed, and you still get that silvery blue-green look to it as well. And this one for me is like a medium grower. It's not, you know, the fastest where there's always new growth on it, but it does grow decently quick compared to some other plants. And like I said, I took this one on my trip with me as well, and I didn't lose a single leaf. I'm losing some old leaves now though because it's like summer and it's putting out so much new growth right now, so the older growth is gonna die. But this one as well was one that I had to repot I think at the beginning of the year because it was in a 4-inch pot, and I looked at the roots one day because it was like, so telltale way real quick as we pause real quick. A good indicator that you need to repot your plant and that the roots are just like really root bound inside your pot without looking at the roots is you have to water them a lot more frequently, even though like it's not summer or anything like that. So this was in the winter. I would water the plant and then a couple days later the leaves were like still wilted and everything. So I could tell that it still like needed water, but I had just watered it, so it didn't make sense because a lot of my plants can go like a week without watering. So I knew something was up, so I went to check the roots, and also during this entire thing the leaves never fully like popped back out. They were always in that curled state. So I knew that something was wrong because I knew even after I watered it and the leaves didn't bounce back that something was going on there. So I popped it out of its nursery pot, and sure enough, all the roots were wrapped around so tightly, and I had to break them up as much as I could because I couldn't really break up a lot of the roots since they were so like packed in there. So I broke it up as much as I could from its 4-inch pot and then potted it in the 6-inch pot that it's in now. And even now there's roots coming out of the bottom, but I don't think it's at that point yet that it was before. I just think the roots have found their way outside. But like I said, if you want a Skindapsis, I definitely recommend this being one of the first ones that you get, just because it is so easy to care for and it is super forgiving if you forget to water it a bit. And I mean, it's super easy to tell, so you shouldn't be forgetting to water this one. If you do, that's okay. Like, you can bounce back from it. But this one is super easy, even more so than the previous Skindapsis, to tell when it needs to be watered. Another Skindapsis that I have that I absolutely love is my treubii Moonlight. If I say that correctly, I don't care, that's how I'm gonna say it. But it has also just started to vine off the side of the pot here. And this is one that was also in a bit of a rough shape when I first got it. And it does need to be watered soon, but the leaves aren't like completely flopped over yet, so I'm not going to water until that happens. Even though the soil is dry, but it's just not there yet. I don't know how to explain it, but if you, surely you can understand. If you do, yeah, you definitely know what I'm talking about. But I just need to wait until the leaves kind of droop a bit more, because otherwise I'm gonna end up overwatering it, and just, yeah, you want to always wait until the plant tells you when it's thirsty. But anyways, this one is a really pretty plant, obviously, but this one shows a bit more dust than your traditional Skindapsis. But the leaves are a lot darker and just a lot prettier in my mind. And I know this plant is sometimes hard to come by in some areas, but if you can find this plant, I just recommend giving it the same care as the Exotica, but this one's a bit more temperamental as well, particularly with the waterings. So this plant, instead of the leaves like curling in, they kind of just like flop over, which is weird, but like they kind of just get a lot more wilted, almost like a pothos, but this one looks a bit different since its stems are thicker and all that sort of stuff. But yes, the leaves just like kind of flop over a bit instead of curling downwards. With all Skindapsis, they propagate super easily, so I don't see a lot of people propagating them for some reason, but they propagate super easily in my experience, particularly the first Skindapsis that I showed. That is one that I'm constantly propagating because it's growing so fast. This one's probably the slowest grower out of the three for me, but I do have a propagation from him that is growing that I potted up a couple months ago or so, but let me grab that one for you. This is the propagation from that plant. So this is one that I potted up a couple months ago, and the roots were already quite thick and long, so I just potted them up as best I could into a 4-inch pot. And we have our first sign of new growth coming over here. But yeah, this, I mean, it's had the same exact care for the big main plant, but it's just, it's just taken a lot more time to grow than a lot of plants that I'm used to, because I usually only have like quick growing plants just because I'm really impatient. But this one is definitely one that I need to be a bit more patient with. But yeah, kind of just, if you have a Moonlight, just don't expect it to grow super quickly because it just takes its time sometimes, even though I have it in bright light and all that sort of stuff. But this is one I just watered it yesterday, and that was because the leaves were all flopped over. They perk up basically right when you water them, but yeah, if they don't perk up, that's when you, like I said with the Exotica, should go check at the roots and see what's going on. And before we close out this video, I want to give you one more tip when it comes to Skindapsis in general. And this is more so for the Exotica and treubii, just because they have thicker leaves, stems, all that sort of stuff. Meanwhile, the first Skindapsis, I'm gonna refer to it as the first Skindapsis because I can't say the name. It's more like a pothos kind of like shape and everything, so it's a lot easier to clean. But with the Skindapsis Exotica and treubii, it kind of overlaps when you get to the stem, like the leaf overlaps a bit. Probably easier to show you. So focusing on this leaf right here, I have to clean it periodically, obviously, as you should do with all of your plants. But if you can see up here, the leaf overlaps a bit with itself, so then you need to still clean that inside area, because if you do have pests, they're gonna love that bit. I find that it's easiest to do with a Q-tip. You just have to make sure that the Q-tip is wet so it doesn't rip the plant, and you have to do it gently still. But if you use a Q-tip, it makes that a lot easier. And that's just one little tidbit that I thought would be helpful for new time plant parents, or just any plant parent really. But I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you can make your Skindapsis thrive. And if you haven't gotten a Skindapsis already, I hope you go get one, because they're honestly the prettiest plants ever and really underrated a lot of times. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later.